Greed, power, and lust steal 20.9 million voices, shackle 20.9 million spirits, and slash 20.9 million dreams. Every day, millions of people are denied the essence of what it means to be human, the freedom of choice. Every day, men, women, and children are forced to be modern-day slaves. Every day, societies turn their heads, ignoring those most in need of help. Millions of victims are trapped in the ugly underbellies of civilization, forced into labor, domestic servitude, and sexual exploitation. It's a global problem affecting nearly every country. The United Nations 2012 Global Report found that victims from 136 nations were trafficked to 118 different countries. But statistics on victims represent only the tip of the iceberg. The majority of the complex issue remains hidden, happening behind closed doors and online. There are many forms of human trafficking, but this film will focus only on sex trafficking. Human sex trafficking is defined as forcing someone to engage in a sexual act using force, fraud, or coercion. A victim does not have to be physically transported from one location to another to be considered a sex trafficking victim. And it can happen anywhere, from the city streets to the small town. And victims come from the most susceptible groups of society.
But there's always a story behind every single girl that has to go for prostitution.
Natalie Cameron was among the most vulnerable. She comes from the poorest country in Europe, Moldova. When she was 4 years old, an accident blinded her mother and she could not keep a job. Natalie says she never knew her father, so living with her grandmother was her only option. But when Natalie turned 7, her grandmother abandoned her, leaving her in a Moldovan orphanage.
You're just a number, because in my orphanage we were almost 800 kids with the same story, with the same pain, different backgrounds, but eventually we're all end up in the same place for a reason, you know.
Natalie says when she turned 16, she, like the rest of the orphans, would be kicked out onto the street with only a bus ticket and a couple dollars in her pocket. In Moldova, orphans are treated like second-class citizens and for the rest of their lives must carry a document stating that they're an orphan.
And every time somebody sees that document is, oh, you're an orphan, you're gonna steal, you're gonna cheat, you're never gonna be good enough. So this stigma attached to you is all the time. And I mean, when I was in the orphanage, I tried to dream. I tried to come out of my comfort zone and say, you know, I need to do good in school. I need to try and become somebody. But at the same time, the world that I was living in was telling me something else. You'll never succeed in life. Nothing plus nothing will always equal nothing.
Many of them turned to the only profession they thought was possible, prostitution. Natalie was one of the few orphans who escaped the streets.
And I was so close 2 days before I was about to be put on the street. Stella's voice came. 2 days. That's how close I was.
Natalie is one of hundreds Stella's Voice rescued. The charity provides shelter, food, and education for the orphaned and abandoned in Moldova. But not everyone can get a second chance. One of Natalie's closest friends, Valentina, was unable to break free of her grim circumstances. Natalie says more than likely Valentina never will.
They took the innocence away from that girl. And she was like my sister because I grew up with her, so it was really hard.
Natalie says that Valentina became a prostitute because she had nowhere else to go.
But no little girl, when it's growing up, sits in her bed, in her room, thinking about her future and says, oh, I want to be a prostitute. Nobody has that dream. Life took them there.
Sometimes Natalie wonders where Valentina would be today if she had the opportunity at a fresh start.
She said, I know one thing, I wouldn't be standing here with tears in my eyes telling you that this is my story, being disgusted at myself and hating every single day that I live. I don't know how she gets up every morning. I just, it's hard.
Nearly every day, traffickers forced Valentina to have sex. But she told Natalie that Christmas Day in Greece was the worst moment in her life. It was then 95 men raped Valentina. Shortly afterwards, she disappeared.
I don't know how they do what they do. I don't know if they have a heart. I question that. And I don't question many people if they have a heart or not. But those are the people that I do question the most.
Valentina is one of millions sold into slavery around the world. The first country she was trafficked to was Cyprus. The small Mediterranean island is among more than 130 countries struggling with sex trafficking. But division on the island amplifies the problem even more. Cyprus has the only military-enforced border in Europe, along with the only divided capital in the world, Nicosia. Cyprus has been divided since 1974, following a bloody coup d'etat among the Turks and the Greek government. The UN created a militarized buffer zone to stop the fighting. To the south of the border lies the Republic of Cyprus, which is part of the EU. To the north is the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. The international community, including America, does not recognize TRNC. Turkey is the only country that considers this area a sovereign state. This division creates the perfect environment for sex trafficking.
Since TRNC is not recognized, this part of the island is totally isolated from international pressure, international community, and international law.
Jeren Gurik is a lawyer and president of the Refugee Rights Association in Northern Cyprus. She says TRNC is doing little to help victims of sex trafficking.
Everybody knows that prostitution takes place there. Also, government actually accepts the fact that prostitution takes place there.
As of fall 2013, Parliament had yet to approve of an anti-trafficking amendment to the criminal code.
But unfortunately, since we don't have any mechanism in the law, it's not possible to eliminate it, to fight against it, and also to protect victims.
In 2012, more than 1,000 women worked in nightclubs and bars licensed by TRNC. That's one of the reasons why the U.S. State Department considers TRNC a Tier 3 area on its 4-step scale, with Tier 1 as being the best at tackling trafficking and Tier 3 being the worst.
They were told that they are going to work as housekeepers, in domestic workers, in nannies, and different jobs. But when they came here, they realized that they are work for prostitution. They are raped, they are beaten, they don't have freedom of movement, they cannot quit their jobs, they don't have any right, they are slaves.
In northern Cyprus, prostitution is technically illegal, but officials act as middlemen in the sex trade. The law requires these women to get tested for STDs once a week, and authorities must hold on to their passports until they leave. It's not a secret, but it's rarely discussed.